The modern American political landscape is often described as a battlefield of ideas, but in Minneapolis, Minnesota, this metaphor has transitioned into a literal and lethal reality. The juxtaposition of two harrowing narratives emanating from the same metropolitan hub creates a chilling tableau of governance in collapse. On one side of the equation stands Mayor Jacob Frey, a figurehead of progressive defiance who famously directed federal enforcement agents to leave his jurisdiction using profane language. On the other side lies the lifeless body of Renee Nicole Good, a woman whose death during a federal operation serves as the grim physical manifestation of the rhetorical war waged by city leadership. When dissected together through the lens of conservative media, specifically Fox News, these two elements form a searing indictment of the sanctuary city model. This analysis aims to deconstruct the complex machinery of this conflict, examining how the severance of communication between local and federal authorities transformed a major American city into a zone of unpredictability and bloodshed. To fully grasp the magnitude of the situation in Minneapolis, one must first profile the architect of its current political stance, Jacob Frey. In the narrative constructed by his critics, Frey is not merely a politician, but a symptom of a broader dysfunction within urban governance. A transplant from Virginia and a former professional runner turned civil rights attorney, Frey represents a specific archetype of the modern Democratic leader: charismatic, ideologically rigid, and deeply committed to the optics of social justice. His rise to power was predicated on a promise to reshape the relationship between the government and marginalized communities. However, the Fox News profile suggests that his background as an outsider contributes to a governance style that prioritizes abstract political theory over the gritty, practical realities of maintaining public order in the Midwest. The inflection point of Frey's administration and the moment that came to define his adversarial relationship with Washington was his explosive directive regarding immigration and customs enforcement. By publicly and profanely ordering federal agents to exit his city, Frey did more than utter a curse word. He signaled a total cessation of diplomatic and operational cooperation. This was not a spur-of-the-moment outburst, but the verbalization of the separation ordinance, a policy framework that legally prohibits the Minneapolis Police Department from assisting federal agents in civil immigration enforcement. The logic underpinning this policy is rooted in the belief that if local police are seen as an extension of federal deportation forces, immigrant communities will retreat into the shadows, refusing to report crimes or act as witnesses, thereby making the city less safe for everyone. Frey views his stance as a moral imperative, a necessary shield for vulnerable populations against what he perceives as a draconian federal apparatus. However, the counter-narrative, forcefully articulated through the coverage of the Renee Nicole Good tragedy, posits that this refusal to cooperate does not protect communities, but rather endangers them by altering the tactical landscape of law enforcement. This is the crux of the conflict. In a functioning system of federalism, local and national agencies operate like gears in a machine, sharing data and coordinating actions to minimize risk. When a suspect targeted by federal agents is in local custody, the standard procedure is a secure transfer within the controlled environment of a jail or courthouse. These transfers are sterile, bureaucratic, and generally devoid of physical conflict. By forbidding this cooperation, Frey's administration effectively bolted the doors of the controlled environments, forcing federal agents to seek their targets elsewhere. This brings the analysis to the tragic death of Renee Nicole Good. Her demise is the direct kinetic result of the policy decisions made in City Hall. Because federal agents could not coordinate with local police to apprehend suspects quietly and safely, they were compelled to conduct at-large operations. An at-large operation takes place in the uncontrolled variables of the public sphere, inside homes, in apartment complexes, and on busy streets. In these environments, the variables are infinite and dangerous. Agents are entering unknown territory, often without the backup or local intelligence that the Minneapolis Police Department could have provided. They operate with a siege mentality, knowing they are in a jurisdiction where the local government is openly hostile to their presence. In the incident involving Good, federal agents were attempting to execute a high-risk mandate in a residential area. The chaos that ensued, resulting in gunfire and death, highlights the catastrophic potential of at-large raids. Critics argue that had the separation ordinance not been in place, the targets of the investigation might have been apprehended in a low-risk setting, and Renee Nicole Good would still be alive. In this light, Good is portrayed not just as a victim of a shooting, but as a victim of a broken chain of command. Her death serves as a brutal counterpoint to Frey's claims of moral superiority. While the mayor championed his policy as a means to protect the community, the tangible outcome was a federal raid that left a woman dead and a neighborhood traumatized. The media framing of these events is instrumental in understanding their broader political impact. Fox News utilizes the duality of Frey and Good to construct a comprehensive critique of Democratic urban management. The narrative is structured to strip away the veneer of compassionate progressivism and reveal what they argue is incompetence. By focusing on Frey's profanity, the coverage paints him as performative and immature, a leader who relies on shock value to appease his base while the city crumbles. Simultaneously, the focus on the shooting highlights the tangible costs of his ideology. The message transmitted to the audience is that the sanctuary city model is a failed experiment that sacrifices the safety of law-abiding citizens to score political points against the federal administration. Furthermore, this situation illustrates a profound crisis in American federalism. The United States system relies on a delicate balance of power and cooperation between different levels of government. Minneapolis under Jacob Frey represents a rupture in this fabric. When a city declares itself legally and operationally separate from federal enforcement, it creates a jurisdictional gray zone. In this vacuum, standard protocols disintegrate. Federal agents feeling besieged and unsupported may adopt more aggressive postures to ensure their own survival in hostile territory. Local police, bound by ordinances they did not write, are forced to stand down even when their federal counterparts are engaged in lethal situations mere blocks away. This paralysis creates opportunities for criminal elements to exploit the gaps in enforcement, further degrading the quality of life for residents. The standoff also reveals the limitations of performative politics. Frey's directive to federal agents was a powerful viral moment designed to signal resistance and solidarity with his constituents. Yet, as the subsequent tragedy demonstrated, rhetoric has limitations when it collides with the monopoly on force held by the federal government. The federal government possesses the authority and the mandate to enforce its laws regardless of local objections. When local cooperation is withdrawn, the federal apparatus does not disappear. It adapts. It brings heavier equipment, it utilizes different tactics, and it operates with less concern for local sensitivities because the bridge of communication has already been burned. The tragedy of Minneapolis suggests that resistance without a pragmatic framework for coexistence leads only to escalation. Renee Nicole Good's death is a somber reminder that the friction between political ideologies generates heat, and eventually, that heat causes a fire. In the abstract debates over jurisdiction and civil rights held in city council chambers, the physical risks often seem distant. But on the streets of Minneapolis, the lack of coordination meant that highly armed agents were maneuvering through neighborhoods without the stabilizing influence of local partnership. The bullet that struck Good did not distinguish between federal authority and local ordinance. It was the final, irreversible output of a system in conflict with itself. The implications of this analysis extend far beyond the city limits of Minneapolis. It serves as a warning for other municipalities engaging in similar brinksmanship with state and federal powers. The lesson drawn from the juxtaposition of Jacob Frey's words and the subsequent bloodshed is that the total severance of interagency cooperation removes the safety rails of law enforcement. It turns routine police work into military-style incursions. For the residents caught in the middle, the nuance of who has jurisdiction is irrelevant compared to the immediate danger of living in a zone where the government is at war with itself. Ultimately, the story told by these two interconnected events is one of institutional failure. It is a story where a mayor's desire to make a political statement resulted in a tactical environment where lethal force became more probable. It is a story where federal agents operating in isolation engaged in a sequence of events that ended a life. And it is a story of a woman who paid the ultimate price for the dysfunction of her government. The Fox News coverage, while partisan in its intent, exposes a fundamental truth. When ideology supersedes the practical mechanics of public safety, the result is chaos. Jacob Frey remains in office, continuing to advocate for his vision of the city. But the legacy of his administration is now indelibly marked by the reality that his rejection of federal partnership did not make the federal agents disappear. It simply made their presence more volatile and lethal than it ever needed to be. The tragic intersection of Frey's defiance and Good's death stands as a permanent monument to the perils of performative governance in an era of deep political division.